Hi, this is Phoenix, and I'm going to talk a little bit about our drives to life, or our drives to living, as they could be called. I've been thinking about what makes me as an organism tick and feel very enthusiastic and passionate about the life that I have, and how much of that is driven by unconscious factors, as well as the actual biology in which I experience. I've been thinking about this as I write my poetry, as I write my book X, which could be considered a subversive novel due to some of its themes. It is certainly very thematic, at the very least, as well as thinking about what gets me going, the kind of visceral reaction I have to words and ideas, concepts such as I discover in my book Logic, which would be called an extended essay. As you can tell, I've been thinking a lot about what gets people, specifically myself, to tick. I've been trying to think about my drives, and one of the most basic ideas that I've come up recently is that in order to understand ourselves, we have to understand our biology, and we don't have to understand biology necessarily in an abstract sense or in a scientific sense, but we can certainly understand it psychologically. And I think about it in this light because there are many things that I experience that fall outside the realm of most people's experience that is due to my manic tendencies. There is a way in which I feel supercharged whenever I'm experiencing very visceral feelings or ideas and thoughts in my head that can be very difficult to express, but that I feel nonetheless. Mania is characterized by impulsivity, as well as strong emotions, as well as a flight of ideas and thought. And this can often make life very exciting, but also troublesome. But even aside the troublesome nature of suffering from something like mania, I think there is a very real sense in which I would hope that people feel very enthusiastic about life in a general sense, in a sense of like just the sheer magnitude of what life is and what life is in a lot of personal ways for people. It's certainly complicated, our drives, we don't understand them. I think sometimes it is easy to collapse into the opposite tendency, which is one of rest or even fatigue and exhaustion. And so when you're feeling these things because you're hungry or you're sleepy or you're tired from working all week, it's very difficult to feel this drive to life. But the way that I apply it is not necessarily focusing on those moments, necessarily in the sense of seeing it as a kind of defeat from the enthusiasm that we can feel in life, but rather holding on to those moments and realizing them as a contrast to when you feel more up, so to speak, or energetic. I certainly think that things like sleep, to a manic mind such as myself, sleep and eating, hunger drives can be very frustrating because they often make you feel fatigued until that need is met. But I'm not necessarily talking about those limitations. I'm talking about when all of that stuff is balanced and we're able to actually live our lives, and we realize that we can live in the super intense moment. It's a way of living in the moment, and that's kind of what I've been espousing in my own psychology recently when I think about the things that I experience. Psychologically, I have a very visceral response and reaction to the world around me, to the ideas that I hear on a regular basis, and this is what I'm reacting to, this is what I'm responding to. So a good analogy to this is thinking about someone like Nietzsche, Friedrich Nietzsche, the existential philosopher of the 19th century, who was always reacting very viscerally and upbeat to all of the ideas and experiences that were surrounding him and that were happening within himself. And I think that that's kind of what I seek to emulate with this idea of drive. Even whenever I'm reflecting on my moments when I'm very tired, I can still nonetheless feel alive if I focus on that understanding. I don't think that drives are bad at all. I think they're difficult to understand, however, because we don't understand what they're leading towards. But obviously drives would include like sexual drives as well, and definitely the exploration of those things can lead to a lot of joy and a lot of understanding. And like all of this is to basically say that I think we have to experiment with our psychology and with our biology and see what really makes us feel alive. I'm definitely not talking about abusing yourself. So that might include something like drugs or unsafe practices in your sexuality or any number of things. I'm talking about a very just like kind of natural way of thinking about our drives and like the fact that we're already overloaded with what we are required to do in any given moment, but feeling alive in that. So I've noticed that when negative things happen to me recently, my response is to approach it with an upbeat nature and to not feel like I have to solve the problem, but rather live with it and accept it and let it make me feel alive. As a final note, when it comes to this, for my own personal psychology, I definitely think of something like music and how music, or even art in general, even the philosophy of Nietzsche, can make you feel very much alive and very much real and engaged with the world around you. And that's another example of all of the things that can work around us and work within us to make us feel alive. I would also say in closing that you don't necessarily force this, though. You don't force the feeling of being alive. It's more of just trying to live in the present and live in the moment. And we can do that by thinking about our drives, by harnessing our drives, by thinking about what moves us and what motivates us. And we don't have to force it. This is Phoenix, and I hope you enjoyed this little discussion on our drives. And I guess I feel a little bit supercharged, and I think that's pretty fun and exciting. This is Phoenix, and thank you.